Hello, Planeteers. Here I am with the stack that I should have recorded on Friday. Uh, it's been busy, and I can't really see that on Saturday when I was going to post this, I instead went to Revenge of Comics and Pinball for their comics creators block party that was nominally hosted by Patton Oswalt and Jordan Bloom. Ironically, though I saw them both, I did not actually get to speak to either one of them, but it's okay. I've done it before. It was a fantastic event, and I do recommend Revenge of Comics and Pinball. Of course, this bunch of books this week, the stack comes from House of Secrets, my regular comic shop, great comic shop close by. I like Revenge of Comics and Pinball because it's a nice little event center, and every time I go, it appears to have expanded. And this past weekend was no exception. So let's go through the stack. The rules are that I have read 2 or 3 books from the stack, and the rest are books that I'm going to catch up on. So usually on the weekend, as happens, I read several from stacks gone by. So I have some sense of, do I love these books, or am I just buying them out of habit? I love these books. No one should be more surprised than me that I love Batman. This is the top of the pile for me every time a new issue comes out. I mean, it's only been 3 issues, but it's by Matt Fraction and Jorge Jimenez on art, with Tomeo Mori on colors, and Clayton Cowles with Jorge Jimenez also did the lettering. So I love paying that extra attention to what what their art skills are, and how much lettering adds to the game of storytelling in comics. But why do I love Batman, and why am I surprised? I had gotten to this point where, look, I've been reading Batman comics since 1969, and had that Batman from the 30s to the 70s book that perhaps you've seen photos of, very old hardcover, but gave me a lot of depth and info into who all these characters were. And definitely I'm of the age where I had the 100-page giants, Detective Comics, and you had all these old stories. So long story short, I've been through every phase of Batman, and I got to a point where I'm like, I like Batman. I love going to Batman movies. Batman 66 still kind of my favorite, but that's because that's how I really truly first encountered the character. My point being, I thought I'd been done with all the stories, and I just like to see him. I don't need to read him anymore unless he shows up in somebody else's book. But I'd heard a lot of hype on this Matt Fraction, and I do love it. And the first issue was this perfect one self-contained story that kind of got you up to the status quo of Batman, which is a little insane right now, where Vandal Savage is the police commissioner of Gotham City, and Jim Gordon is back to being a beat cop. Okay, I do think probably with the reality of the world, it's funny to say reality of the world when I'm talking about the DC universe, but with the reality of things, Batman probably does work better as a vigilante, being a little, not so chummy with the police. All good, but the point was, it was Batman with Killer Croc, and what Matt Fraction's doing is kind of noticing some of the, I'm not going to say gentler things that people did with characterizations, but pulling in some things that I think were kinder and maybe sadder elements of the Batman mythos in general. Wayland from the Killer Croc is, I can't remember what year it was, but I think it was Jeff Johns that included. There was Villains United, maybe, where it was established that Wayland was a child when he started this transformation, and so that's there in this. This is, granted, only the 3rd issue, but it deals with the Riddler. Hugo Strange has popped up in a way that it's interesting to see him pop up, because logically, the very classic Steve Englehart, Marshall Rogers run that brought Hugo Strange back, that story's been retold. That's not what's happening here. But the Riddler shows up, and what I love about this is that Matt Fraction seems to be the first person to have remembered in years one thing going on with Edward Nygma, whether you believe that's his real name or not, because that's been rewritten a few times. But in the 60s, there was a story that established that if the Riddler is mentally ill, and you can debate this, but he's super smart, but also has an actual, as they phrased it, on a Slurpee cup, he has a mental block that requires him to do the riddles, to leave the riddles to his crime. It's like he doesn't want to, because he realizes as a super intelligent person that leaving riddles often is a clue and allows him to be captured by Batman over and over, but he can't help himself. And this issue brings that back. And it's been a long time since I've read a story involving the Riddler where that was brought up. And so Matt Fraction, just like, oh my God, if you're not reading Adventure Man, when and if it ever, comes out, Matt Fraction gets to the heart of these characters, of any character he works on. So love this. All right. I went too long here. Next one was Alien versus Captain America. Mostly read because it was the #1 issue. I didn't want to fall behind. I wanted to decide, do I like this book before I start buying it regularly, and then discover after reading a first issue that I don't. But I did. It's written by Frank Thierry, art by Stefano Raffaele, and color artist is Niraj Menon, and VC's Clayton Cowles is the letterer. And there are cover artists, many variants. I don't even know which one I got because I just picked it up. I think I got Lionel Yu, Lionel Francis Yu, who I just, I love. So serendipity that I got the cover that I would probably have gone for a variant. I'm not a big variant fan. Anyway, why I picked this up in general, I read the Avengers versus Aliens, or Aliens versus Avengers. I'm not really sure which way they put that. It was a really good apocalyptic story. And what this reminds me, this places Alien in World War II, a Hydra / really Red Skull plan. And what is fascinating on this one, Inhumans were wiped out by aliens centuries ago. What I'm reminded on Alien is something that just came up in Superman, the Book of L, a miniseries over at DC, which is mentioned that Superman is as strong as the situation requires him to be. And I think that's the same way with Aliens. Like I said, the Alien versus Avengers was absolutely apocalyptic. It was a depressing book. It's okay. There were really good reasons. Very cool. Every character acted in character, and Earth was destroyed. Sorry, spoiler, but it's like 6 months old. And here you got to have hope because it's Captain America alone in World War II. So clearly the aliens are a little bit depowered. I think that same thing just happened on Alien Earth on Hulu. That you can't, that people just keep building it up bigger and bigger and bigger. And I sometimes think that's the problem with modern storytelling. Yes, you do have to keep raising the stakes, but we've gotten to a point with some IPs that you've raised the stakes so big that it's just, it's too much. So you got to depower from time to time. So anyway, I enjoyed that. So that was good. I'd recommend that. This at House of Secrets, we all said, like, what? A new R. Crumb book? Okay, very much off the beaten path. Tales of Paranoia by R. Crumb, legendary underground cartoonist. I'm not going to say one way or the other. Yes, by modern standards, he's kind of problematic. And really, when I look back in my childhood, when I was sporadically exposed to R. Crumb's work, he always was. And he never quite fit in with the underground culture, but there he was, and there's a great documentary about him. Look, I'm not recommending that the guy is somebody you should listen to, but he's an interesting artist. And his Tales of Paranoia are, he's a little anti-vax. His reasoning, well, it's reasoning at least. That's part of the paranoia. But it's also, there's wrestling with God, and here's a legendary artist in his late 70s, maybe early 80s, and pondering what to know and believe and so forth. And I'd say it's an interesting it's an interesting discussion. So I recommend that you pick up Tales of Paranoia and engage with it a bit. And as always, it's autobiographical to some extent from him, and it's it was a good book, and it's as simple as that. I'm really glad that I read that, even though I disagree with a lot. So next, Cheetah and Cheshire rob the Justice League. This is Greg Rucka, Nicholas Scott. The problem with all comics right now is hiding that title page where you can find the credits. And you may notice that very vainly, I am not wearing my glasses to do this because I figure I'm right up against the camera. I can see just well enough to know. Oh my gosh, yeah, they hid that. Annette Kwok is colors. I'm going to pay attention. These are great subtle coloring, especially when you've got a character such as Clarion the Witch Boy. Coloring is all with Clarion. Troy Pateri is letters, and there's a special thanks to Alex Jaffe. I do not know why, but special thanks. That's awesome. Anyway, I'm enjoying this. It's a heist on the Justice League satellite, which is, I can't remember what they're calling it now. There's a silly word for the watchtower in Justice League Unlimited. I'm a few issues behind, but the couple of issues I've read, I really enjoyed because again, there was sort of like a major critical response. I had to pick it up and read it and go, yeah, I love Greg Rucka. Absolutely love Greg Rucka's work. I love Nicholas Scott's art. And by the way, you got to pick up Halloween Man, my friend Drew Edwards. The omnibus features a lot of her early work, which is great. So it's a great book. JSA. I'm a sucker for this. I mentioned Slurp Ups earlier. That's how I discovered the JSA. Well, no, combination. Again, those 100-page giants, like everything's coming back around. Those 100-page giants and Slurpee cups, which had a preponderance of Golden Age characters on the Slurpee cups. If you don't know what I'm talking about, 73, 74. Smaller than they seemed to be when I was a child. But anyway, this I believe is Jeff Lemire writing, and again, artist Gavin Guidry, colors Luis Guerrero, and letters Steve Wands. So this is going back to whatever in this new history of the DC universe, year one of JSA looks like, and I'm a sucker for these kinds of stories. Now, recently, Jeff Johns rewrote or retconned that there are a lot of lost sidekicks, and he created new opponents from the Golden Age that didn't really exist in the Golden Age, but it needs a retelling. Like, say this is the status quo going forward. Cool. I've mentioned on an earlier one of these that I occasionally have issues with Jeff Johns. That's not Jeff Johns as a person. That's Jeff Johns as a writer. That I think he's doing so much great work with Ghost Machine. I'm not as excited when I see him come back and do anything for DC because that ship sailed. He had his time. That was great. He's actually rewritten himself a couple of times. So when he comes in and messes around with JSA, it's time for new voices. And I say that as someone like, man, he was an incredible fresh voice when he came in and was very kind to me personally for Fanboy Planet very early on. And he was a fresh voice, and he's, like I said, has even rewritten himself 2 or 3 times now. Build Ghost Machine, dude. That's incredible work, and that's where you're gonna, you need to be remembered for, is that incredible work. So anyway, let's let Jeff Lemire. You know what? That's another one of those creator names. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm not sure I've ever heard anybody say it out loud because I've never seen him at a con. I mean, he's been there, but I've never been onto a panel. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm behind on JSA, and I love JSA. So I want to see what this is going, where this is going. I should have read this because it's a #1 issue. Dan Waters, Sammy Cavella, Valentina Bianconi, and Comicraft doing lettering Doctor Who. And look, normally I don't buy media crossover books, but I think that what's happened in the last several years of Doctor Who, and as a Doctor Who fan, uh, that we get great actors, fun characters, and not enough in the way of story, and not enough logic in the way of story, except in the comics by Titan Comics. Um, I just realized, man, I keep looking at myself coming back, and I need to remember going back in the camera. Yes, work in progress, and I'm going to do these live stream eventually. I promise. If anybody cares. Anyway, so I'm picking this up. I like Dan Waters' work. It's the Prison Paradox new miniseries. We're never going to get, well, we might get him flashing back sometime, but Ncuti Gatwa, will not be back as the Doctor. And I thought it was a great characterization. And I really want more. So if this is the only way that I can do it, and eventually probably the Big Finish audio, it's the way I'm going to be able to get him. Okay. Dude, you left too soon. Not your fault. But there we go. Absolute Green Lantern. I think, a new arc by Al Ewing. Al Ewing and Janoy Lindsay, who's done the art and the color, and Lucas Gattoni on the lettering. Absolute Green Lantern, I've mentioned before, I love all the absolutes. That absolute universe is really intriguing. And what's Green Lantern's one of my favorites because it chose characters to be the featured, if you want to say absolute Green Lantern of this universe, that you wouldn't necessarily have expected. Joe Mullane is the main one. John Stewart's there. Hal Jordan is there. I don't want to, if you haven't read it, I don't want to spoil it, but it's very different. And so really enjoy that. I won't say much here. Peach Momoko's Ultimate X-Men. I love the Ultimate line too, but I love this because it's gotten a little more closely tied to the rest of the Ultimate universe. But what I loved about it in the beginning, and the vibe is still there, is it started off as like a Japanese horror comic. And then eventually it became, oh yeah, I guess they're recognizably mutants. And some of them are mutants you might kind of recognize who they are, but that's also happening over in Ultimate Wolverine. So it's a weird parallel. But regardless, I just love the take on this. It's so different than anything else in the Ultimate line, anything in the Absolute line. She's great. So anyway, Minor Arcana by Jeff Lemire and written and illustrated by Jeff Lemire and colored by Patricio Del Pesce and lettered by Steve Wands. Minor Arcana from Boom Studios. Now, look, I'm putting ups there. I know that there are people that prefer when Jeff Lemire just writes and lets somebody else draw, because I know his art isn't the most accessible, but still I've gotten to really, really get into it when it's a very personal creator-owned story like this. I feel the same way about Sweet Tooth. I know that some people didn't like reading Sweet Tooth because they couldn't get past his art, and I think that's a mistake because it is so personal. It is so coming from him, and I like Minor Arcana. Definitely wrestling with the big questions, and you may see me come back time and time again to that. Look, those big questions about who we are, what's beyond, if anything, they're important. And we are a culture that doesn't deal with that well. Exhibit A, the push for AI and saying, oh, you can recreate your loved ones because look, we have to deal, we have to grieve, we have to move on, and we have to accept that there's loss and tragedy, which many of us do because every day in the news there's loss and tragedy. But there are some people that are still going, in the money, ain't we got fun? Yeah, but let's enough about Mar-a-Lago. Anyway, so last of the regular books, Absolute Superman. Enough said, except to give credit. Jason Aaron writing, Rafa Sandoval artist, and Ulysses Ariola colorist, and Becca Carey letterer. Again, I'm want to call out all the credits because discovering how many great letterers are out there, how many great colorists. I mean, usually 2 or 3 penetrate my consciousness on a regular basis, but this is tremendous to call out how important lettering has become. Anyway, so I said it's less than normal size. I want to call out Liam Sharpen accidentally got the wrong cover. Not the wrong cover. It's still a beautiful cover. Savage Sword of Conan, number 11. I got the Alex Horley cover. He's great. I meant to get Liam's, but this is a full-length Conan story written and drawn by uh, Liam Sharp, and yeah, nobody else is giving credit, so I'm going to take that. Anyway, I love Liam Sharp's work. I first met him at Comic-Con. Oh, way back when. And when he was starting Made Fire Entertainment. I'd always liked his work, and he faded away for a bit. But he's just become incredible, and he was a great artist in the first place, challenging the form, beautifully detailed, definitely in, you could say, yes, there's a bit of Barry Windsor Smith there. Yes, there was, and he's moved so far beyond that. And plus, he's just one of the nicest guys in comics. And I want to say that after having gone to this block party, and I'll talk about that, block party in detail elsewhere. But I have discovered, just like my diving into the horror community, that the word community is super crucial here. That people are so nice and kind, but my point is that this community is so important, especially now. It's why I love all of this, and why I'm doing this on YouTube. I'm hoping people will engage a little more, and I know I should do it live, but I can't always predict. And the other thing I bought was Solomon Kane. So I'm back to Robert E. Howard stuff. This was by Solomon Kane, The Serpent Ring, and with a cover by Mike Mignola. And this is oh geez, and every time I open up a Titan book with Robert E. Howard stuff, which is actually from Heroic Signatures, who controls those characters, I discover, oh crap, there are short stories that Titan Books has been releasing only online, and now I gotta read that. So anyway, writer artist Patrick Zurcher, colorist Zurcher and Pete Patanzis, letters Richard Starkings, and comic crafts Tyler Smith. And yeah, Richard Starkings I've known for a long time, and he's another one who really opened my eyes to how important lettering is to the art. And just because I was just ignorant, flat out, always learning. But anyway, I've loved Patrick Zurcher's art for a long time. I think I met him at a Comic-Con like 20 years ago. He would have no memory of it. I just saw him at a party and said, hey, you're Patrick Zurcher. I like your work. And I love that work. So once again, and I should have put this up top, sponsorship, please. No, not. And that wraps up this week's stack. And of course, I will get another one soon. I also picked up a lot at this Revenge of Comics and Pinball block party, comic creators block party. So I'll be trying to go through some of those too. But I was also there to kind of go back. We got this Kickstarter coming very soon for Horror Not Hate. J.M. Brandt, horror comics writer, formed Slow Feet Comics. We have this anthology coming in which all the proceeds, after publishing costs, all the proceeds will go to civil rights groups. And it's just kind of a way of using our art, our creativity, to kind of push back on some of the madness that's happening in the world right now. And so, please, if you have not already signed up for that, I hope you do. And, the next time I record one of these things for the stack, I will, I'll say that up front. But anyway, once again, thanks to House of Secrets. Just a great store. Thanks to Revenge of Comics and Pinball, because you've got comics, you've got pinball. Oh, and now you have a coffee shop. And someday I will tell you about the beverage I had called a cold turkey. That's really all I can say about it at this point. I will be taking no further questions. And so, thanks for watching. And remember, use your powers for good.